Welcome back to the Sporting Eyes YouTube channel and my final AFL Fantasy team reveal for 2024. Compared to the first one I did, the team has changed quite a bit, but I think the strategy I've kept pretty much the same. I'm very happy at this stage, so we'll go through it. I've got about 66,000 left for remaining salary, mainly for bench players if some of them don't get named and things like that. But starting off in defence, we have Nick Dacos. I'll be vice-captaining him. I'm going to use a loophole, which I'll explain later. I thought it was pretty good opening round, but not fantastic. But he's one of these guys who's so good that even when he has like an okay game, he's going to get 100 plus in the fantasy format. So I like him. I was pretty cold on Harry Sheezel in the before the practice games, but his role looks just fantastic again. Kick-outs, the way North Melbourne's going to play with kind of him, Fisher and McKercher running out of defence. I think he won't have impact like Nick Dacos had last year, but in a numbers perspective for fantasy, I think he'll put up pretty similar stats actually. For D3, I looked at Salem, Coleman, but he did his ACL. With Christian Salem, I still don't mind it, but his CBAs were a bit low when Oliver came back, and I just don't trust his consistency. And that's why I've gone with Tom Stewart. I'm not sure about his ceiling and things like that. I think a guy like Whitfield and maybe Houston might put up bigger, 120, 130 score, but for that safety net, I think Stewart will be top 6 at least, top 8 at the end of the year, so I've picked him. Will take the most kickouts, can intercept mark, and that chip play that Geelong do, he'll get involved, so pretty easy pick. Hayden Young, I was also a little cold on, but he convinced me. Very high CBAs for Fremantle, kick goals in the practice game against Port Adelaide, big-bodied, strong, so I like him a lot. Zach Williams was really impressive, tired a bit, had a pretty quiet last quarter, but he should be 70 to 80 plus. I was really impressed with him. And Blake Howes as well. I wasn't sure about his scoring potential, but put up some pretty good numbers in the practice game, and then that first game, just as a player, he was really impressive. Very tall, but can play kind of smaller as well. Get involved with some rebound play. So I like him a lot. On the bench, I've gone with Zach Reid. So I think he scored about a 70 odd in fantasy. Can get involved in chip play around the ground and things like that. So I like him, and especially with no Ridley, I think it might help him get some more intercept possessions and just boost his scoring a little bit. And then Ari Schoenmaker, who I never really heard of, to be honest, scored very well for St Kilda and played well out of defence. A lot of their defenders did play well against Essendon in that practice game. Bonner and Wanganeen Malira were pretty high scorers as well, so maybe it was that type of game where everyone in defence put up big numbers, but he's on the bench for now. You could go with a Josh Gibcus, who's a bit more, I believe, he's 256, so I could use that 66,000 if Schoenmaker isn't named to get Gibcus, but I don't think Gibcus will score very well compared to Schoenmaker, but maybe the job security could be better. But for now, I'm very happy with that defence. Now, the strategy for the underpriced guys, which I explained in my first team reveal, I've kept pretty much the same, except Tom Green. Was always warming to him kind of throughout the pre-season as the big gun, because out of all those guys like Butters, Rosie, even kind of the young guys for improvement, I think Tom Green is the pick of that bunch really, and he performed against Collingwood extremely well. I put up about a 110. Just gets heaps of the ball. If he can kick some goals as well, that'll boost his scoring. But he's my kind of big dog, and I still think there's growth in him, so that's why I picked him. He'll be the captain if Nick Dacos doesn't score well. LDU, I know he had a terrible practice game, so a lot of people are probably going to drop off him, but he did this in the last season's practice games. Didn't score well and then came out and went nuts. And I'm just going to back him in. I think he's a bit better than Steele. Even like a Matt Rao, who I think people might jump on, or Noah Anderson. I still think LDU can outscore all those guys. He'll be the number one midfielder for North Melbourne. Can fill every stat line, high kicks goals. So I'm kind of glad he had a bit of a bad practice game, because I think even if it's 3 or 4% might jump off him. That means I get his hopefully get his good scores. Tuke Miller, I liked him. I think I had him in my first team and he stayed. Very impressive. High CBAs, two-way runner, tackle, mark. Fill up the stats again. Perfect player for Damien Hardwick, so he's going to stay. And then Nick Martin was the big one. Him and Max Holmes in that Geelong and Essendon practice game. Both plays very similar roles. Halfback distributing, free roam, do whatever you want. So easy to pick Nick Martin. I think high kick player. So he'll be very good and very excited because he'll get defender status at round 6 or whenever it is. So, we can swap him back for, say, a Hayden Young or something like that. And we can get creative with those type of things, especially during, say, the bye rounds. Ollie Wines did just enough for me. Matt Crouch is also an option, but I like Wines because they've really made it an effort to make him one of their highest centre bounce players inside mid. Where a guy like Matt Crouch, I think, will still have low time on ground and will be a bit more of a burst player, where I think Wines can kind of slog on continuously through the game and rack up tackles, clearances, and just get as much of the ball as possible. I don't think he'll score like he did in his Brownlow year, but as long as he can get that 95-ish to 100 average, he'll make enough money and we can get rid of him at the later stages of the year. 3 rookies, I think these should be most people's starting 3 in the midfield. McKercher had a pretty quiet first quarter in the practice game and then kind of did his regulation stats. I think he had 1 touch in the first quarter, finished with 18 or something. So I think he'll be that guy to get his 6-7 touches per quarter normally and will score very well out of defence. Riley Sanders had 30 touches against Hawthorn. He's a star, one of the best, I think, young inside mids we've ever seen. You don't get a lot of them, so he's pretty special. And then Matt Roberts out of defence, scored very well in opening round, played well, got the rising star, so he's an easy starter. On the bench, Jeremy Sharp didn't play great, kind of junk timed late to get to a respectable 50-ish score in the practice game, but at Optus Oval, big ground, Fremantle like to use the wings, so I expect him to improve and average 60, 70, and I think he'll be great. You're paying a little bit of a premium for him on the bench, but job security should be good, and I think his scoring power at home at Optus Oval should be good as well. Jai Clark, I'm not sure how good of a player he is right now, but they're going to give him pretty good centre bounces. I think he'll be a 65%-ish kind of time on ground guy, so a bit more of a burst. But they should be playing him a lot. Scoring might be a little up and down, maybe a 40 here, but maybe there's a game where he can get 20 touches and 8 or 9 tackles and boost his scoring into a 90 and make a fair bit of money. So I like him on the bench. Grundy I didn't have. I don't think in either of my teams. I was a bit off on him, but he's back. He was fantastic. The conditions did suit him against his partner Max Gawn, who I've got next to him. I was teetering with kind of Tristan Xerri, but I'm going to play it pretty safe and just go with Max Gawn. And it kind of goes into some tactical thinking, if you can see in my forward line. So I got Cohen Livingston on the bench, who's a ruck forward, and I've got him for 2 reasons. You could pick any of the 200k ruck forwards available, but it gives me the loophole, so I can VC during the season, which is good. And then this is the big kind of change in my team. I've got Luke Jackson. A lot of people, I suppose, I think 27% have Flanders, and Heaney's ownership fairly enough because he was outstanding, went up extremely high, but I'm going to go for Luke Jackson. I think he's a bit more unique. And the reasoning is Sean Darcy, they've said he's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks with that knee, which he had the arthroscope on. But other reports from, I think, Channel 9 and Channel 7 saying more likely 6 to 8 weeks with no Sean Darcy, which means Luke Jackson has to be the number 1 ruck. And he put up really good numbers as the sole ruckman for Fremantle in the back end of last year. He had a pretty full pre-season, had a concussion hiccup, which meant he missed a practice game, but I've got Luke Jackson in. And also when Gawn and Grundy have the bye, then I can just put Luke Jackson in, swapping with Cohen Livingston, and I can get kind of backup ruck as well when Gawn and Grundy have their bye. So I at least have one ruckman available. So that's kind of a bit of a tactical element. So I am a little fearful that I don't have Flanders and Heaney, but Heaney's probably more of a Supercoach scorer traditionally, even in the midfield, than fantasy. Still averages about mid-90s in his best years, Heaney, so I'm hoping Luke Jackson can beat him. Zach Fisher, if he can stay healthy, I think he'll put up great numbers. Again, him, Sheasel, McKercher out of defence. Free reign, run and gun, plenty of disposals, 1-2s, kick-outs, pretty simple. The rest of the defence is a bit hard to fill out. I could try and upgrade Fife to a Heaney or Flanders, but I'm going to stick with Fife. I don't really like it. He's at an awkward price. Priced at about 51 or 52. Hoping he can do 80 plus. He'll get high centre bounces, and he looked pretty sharp in the practice game, but it was a lot of handballs, a lot of stuff in congestion, not a lot of outside ball. So that's not great for a fantasy perspective, but I'm just going to back him in because our bench options are pretty solid in the forward line anyway. So if he does fail, I think I can cover it pretty well. James Jordan had a slow start, but got up to 70 odd. That's fine. I think that's what he'll be. Alex Sexton played pretty well at a defence for the Suns in their big win, so I think he's a pretty easy pick. And then kind of these four can all swap for that last F6 position. I have Lazaro in there. With Simpkin out and Will Phillips 50-50 to play, I think Lazaro should get some mid-time. I think his job security will be good. They'll give him a shot to really establish himself in the team. He's expensive, 288k, but I'm going to go for him over a guy like Cadman. And then Windsor and Wilson both on the wings. Windsor I don't think will score as well as Darcy Wilson, who's looked a bit more impressive for St Kilda. But again, they're going to play a lot of games, high job security. I think Hunter's going to be out for a little bit longer, so that means Windsor should make a lot of money. And then Harley Reid I've got as the utility. Didn't have a great first practice game, but his second one was a lot better in the midfield and out of defence, got about 20 touches. So he could easily come in for Lazaro at this stage. It really will just depend on a bit of a feel. Around the Thursday or Friday, I'll put one of those guys at that last forward position. So that's the thinking of each of the players. I'm pretty happy with the team. Right now, it won't change. This will be the team. The only things, if there's an injury or one of these guys don't get picked, then I'll make a change. But I hope you enjoyed this video of me explaining my team and a bit of strategy I'm using. I'm going to play pretty aggressive this year. I think with a guy like LDU and Luke Jackson and even Pfeiffer, a bit more unique kind of picks for guys who are really into it. So hopefully I can go well in this round, and we'll see how we go throughout the season. So thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.